What happens when a beloved morning show host decides he's had enough of royal excuses and calls out a prince live on national television? Well, you're about to find out, because what went down between Michael Strahan and Prince Harry on Good Morning America was absolutely explosive. Before we dive into this incredible confrontation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really triggered Michael's brutal takedown of the Duke of Sussex. The tension was palpable from the moment Prince Harry walked onto the Good Morning America set. Michael Strahan, usually the epitome of charm and professionalism, had a different energy about him that morning. His smile seemed forced, his posture more rigid than usual. The interview was supposed to be a softball promotion for Harry's latest charitable endeavor, but something in Michael's demeanor suggested this wasn't going to go according to plan. "Prince Harry, welcome back to Good Morning America," Michael began, his voice carrying an undertone that seasoned viewers would recognize as restrained irritation. "It's always interesting having you here." Harry, settling into his chair with that familiar, casual confidence, seemed oblivious to the shift in atmosphere. "Thank you for having me, Michael. Always a pleasure to be here with you and the team." "Right," Michael replied, shuffling his papers with perhaps more force than necessary. "Let's talk about your new initiative. Another foundation. Another cause, another opportunity for you to tell us how you're changing the world from your mansion in Montecito." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Harry's smile faltered slightly, his eyes narrowing as he processed what he'd just heard. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the tone of your question, Michael." "Oh, the tone?" Michael leaned back in his chair, his professional mask beginning to slip. "Well, Harry, maybe it's because this is what the 15th interview you've done in the past 6 months about various causes and foundations and initiatives, and yet, here we are again, listening to you tell America how committed you are to making a difference, while you simultaneously tear down the very institution that gave you the platform to make that difference in the first place." The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras. Harry straightened in his seat, his jaw tightening. "Michael, I think you're mischaracterizing my work and my motivations. Everything I do is about creating positive change and helping people who need it most." "Creating positive change," Michael repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "By writing tell-all books about your family, by doing interviews where you accuse them of racism, by airing your private grievances on Netflix for millions of dollars, that's your idea of positive change." "Those were necessary steps to tell my truth and protect my family," Harry shot back, his composure beginning to crack. "I won't apologize for standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult." "Your truth," Michael said, emphasizing each word, "your truth." "See, that's interesting, Harry, because the truth, the actual truth, is that you've built an entire career in America off of trashing the people who raised you, who gave you every opportunity in life, who loved you despite your mistakes. And now you want to sit here and lecture us about service and commitment." The color was rising in Harry's cheeks now. "You don't know what you're talking about, Michael. You don't know what it was like growing up in that environment. The pressures, the expectations, the complete lack of support when I needed it most." "The lack of support?" Michael's voice was rising now, his famous composure completely abandoned. "Harry, you had every door opened for you from the day you were born. You had the best education money could buy, military training, public support, and a family that covered for your mistakes time and time again. And your response to all of that privilege was to run away the moment things got challenging, and then spend years publicly humiliating the people who gave you everything." "That is not what happened," Harry snapped, leaning forward in his chair. "You're oversimplifying a complex situation that you couldn't possibly understand." "Complex," Michael laughed, "but there was no humor in it. Let me simplify it for you. Then, you married a woman, which was wonderful. Your family welcomed her, which they did. But when she didn't like the rules and expectations that come with being part of the royal family, instead of working within the system or quietly stepping back, you both decided to blow everything up publicly and then cash in on the drama. Not complex, Harry. That's just selfish." The words hit Harry like physical blows. His hands gripped the arms of his chair, and for a moment, it looked like he might stand up and walk off the set. "You have no idea what my wife went through, what we both went through, the harassment, the lies in the press, the complete failure of the institution to protect us." "Protect you from what, exactly?" Michael pressed, sensing he had Harry on the defensive. From criticism? From having to follow protocol? From having to earn respect instead of expecting it to be handed to you, because that's what life is like for everyone else. Harry, the rest of us don't get to run to Oprah every time someone hurts our feelings. This isn't about hurt feelings, Harry said through gritted teeth. This is about systemic issues, about an institution that refuses to modernize, about protecting my family from the same forces that killed my mother. The mention of Diana seemed to energize Michael rather than soften him. Don't you dare bring your mother into this to justify your behavior. Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become. She would be heartbroken to see how you've treated your father, your brother, your grandmother before she died. Diana stood by her family even when things were difficult. She didn't run away and write books about how terrible everyone was. Harry's face went white with rage. You did not just say that to me. You don't get to speak about my mother. You don't get to tell me what she would think. I'll speak about whatever I want, Your Royal Highness, Michael said, the title dripping with sarcasm, because this is my show, in my country where we don't bow down to entitled princes who think their problems are more important than everyone else's. Your mother understood duty and service. You understand publicity and profit. Harry shot to his feet, his composure completely shattered. How dare you sit there and lecture me about my mother when you've never walked a day in my shoes? You want to talk about duty and service? I served my country in Afghanistan while you were throwing footballs around a field. I've dedicated my life to causes that matter, to helping veterans, to supporting mental health initiatives, to fighting for people who don't have a voice. Sit down, Michael commanded, his voice cutting through Harry's tirade like a blade. You served, yes, and that was admirable. But you also used that service as a shield for every questionable decision you've made since. And let's be honest. About your charitable work, shall we? How much of the money raised by your various foundations actually goes to the causes versus funding your lifestyle? How much of your advocacy work is really about helping people versus keeping yourself relevant? And in the headlines, Harry remained standing, his fists clenched at his sides. You're questioning my charitable work now? The Invictus Games has helped thousands of wounded veterans. My mental health advocacy has saved lives. Everything I do is about service, not personal gain. The Invictus Games, Michael said, leaning back with a cold smile. Yes, let's talk. About that, a wonderful program that you've now turned into your personal brand. Every photo op, every speech, every appearance centered around you and your story, instead of the actual veterans you claim to serve. You've made yourself the face of their struggles when you should be lifting them up instead. That's not true, Harry protested, but his voice lacked conviction. I use my platform to bring attention to their needs. Your platform, Michael repeated mockingly. The platform you built by betraying your family's trust and selling their secrets to the highest bidder. The platform you maintain by constantly playing the victim while living in luxury most people can't even imagine. Tell me, Harry, what exactly are you a victim of? Being born into one of the most privileged families on earth, having access to resources and opportunities that 99% of the population will never see, having people literally bow to you when you walk into a room. You don't understand the psychological damage that comes with that kind of scrutiny and pressure, Harry shot back, his voice rising to nearly a shout. The constant invasion of privacy, the impossible expectations, the knowledge that every mistake you make will be front-page news around the world. Boo-hoo, Michael said with devastating simplicity. You know what, Harry? Everyone in the public eye deals with scrutiny. Every celebrity, every politician, every athlete faces criticism and pressure. The difference is that most of us don't have centuries of inherited wealth and power to cushion the blow. Most of us don't have taxpayer-funded security and palaces to retreat to when things get tough. I never asked for any of that, Harry said desperately. I never chose this life. No, you didn't choose it, Michael agreed, but you did choose how to respond to it. You could have chosen to honor the sacrifices made by previous generations of your family. You could have chosen to use your position to serve others quietly and with dignity. Instead, you chose to throw it all away the moment someone told you that being royal meant following rules and meeting expectations. The rules were archaic and harmful, Harry insisted. The institution needed to change. So you tried to change it by running away and attacking it from the outside. Michael's laugh was harsh and bitter. That's not reform, Harry. That's revenge. And the saddest part is that you've convinced yourself that your petty grievances are some kind of noble crusade for justice. Harry's hands were shaking now. Whether from rage or hurt was impossible to tell. My grievances aren't petty. The way my wife was treated, the racism she faced, the lies that were spread about us, those aren't petty issues. The racism, Michael said, his tone shifting to something even more dangerous. Let's talk about that. You made some very serious accusations about your family, about unnamed conversations and concerns about your son's skin color. But when pressed for details, when asked to provide actual evidence or context, you and your wife suddenly became very vague about the specifics. Why is that, Harry? Because we were trying to protect people, Harry replied, but his voice was faltering. Protect people, or protect your narrative? Michael leaned forward, his eyes boring into Harry's. Because it's awfully convenient to make inflammatory accusations that destroy reputations and then hide behind claims of protecting privacy when people ask for proof. You can't have it both ways, Harry. You can't claim to be truth-tellers while simultaneously refusing to tell the whole truth. We told our truth, Harry repeated, but the phrase sounded hollow now, rehearsed. There's that phrase again. Your truth. But here's the thing about truth, Harry. It doesn't belong to you. Truth is truth. Facts are facts. And the fact is that you've made serious accusations against your family without providing the context or evidence needed for people to judge for themselves. That's not truth-telling. That's character assassination. Harry slumped back into his chair, the fight seeming to drain out of him. You wouldn't understand. You don't know what it's like to feel trapped, to feel like your voice doesn't matter, to feel like you're suffocating in a system that values tradition over humanity. Actually, I do know what that feels like, Michael said, his voice dropping to a more personal register. I grew up poor, Harry, really poor. I know what it's like to feel powerless, to feel like the system is rigged against you. But you know what I didn't do? I didn't blame everyone else for my problems. I didn't burn bridges with the people who cared about me. I worked harder, I proved myself, and I earned my place at this table. It's different, Harry mumbled. No, it's not different, Michael fired back. It's exactly the same, except that you started with every possible advantage. And I started with nothing. You had love, support, resources, and opportunities that most people can only dream of. And you threw it all away because someone hurt your feelings or told you no. Meanwhile, I had to fight for every opportunity, every break, every chance, to prove myself, and I never once thought the world owed me anything because of my circumstances. The camera zoomed in on Harry's face, capturing the moment when the full weight of Michael's words seemed to hit him. His carefully constructed public persona was crumbling in real time, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. You don't know what you're talking about, he whispered, but even he seemed to know how weak it sounded. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Michael said with quiet intensity. I'm talking about accountability, Harry. I'm talking about taking responsibility for your choices instead of blaming everyone else for the consequences. I'm talking about growing up and acting like a man instead of hiding behind your title and your trauma to justify hurting the people who love you. The silence stretched between them for what felt like an eternity before Harry lifted his head, his eyes blazing with a desperate kind of fury. You think you know everything, don't you? You think because you've had success in America, that gives you the right to judge me and my family situation? I think having success anywhere gives me the right to call out hypocrisy when I see it, Michael replied coolly. And what I see sitting across from me is a man who has every blessing life could offer and has chosen to squander it all for the sake of playing victim on television. Playing victim? Harry's voice cracked with indignation. Michael, I lost. My mother, when I was 12 years old, I watched her coffin being lowered into the ground while millions of strangers watched. I've dealt with addiction, with mental health struggles, with a press that has hounded me since the day I was born. Don't you dare minimize what I've been through. I'm not minimizing your pain, Harry, Michael said, his tone shifting to something that was almost gentle, which somehow made his next words even more brutal. I'm questioning what you've chosen to do with it. Yes, you lost your mother, and that's tragic. But you weren't the only one who loved her and grieved for her. Your father lost his ex-wife and the mother of his children. Your brother lost his mother too. Your grandmother lost a daughter-in-law she had grown to care about. But somehow, you've made it all about your pain, your struggle, your trauma, as if no one else's feelings matter. Harry's face contorted with anguish. They had each other. They had the system to protect them. I was alone. Alone. Michael's eyebrows shot up. You had your father, who by all accounts tried his best to be there for you, despite dealing with his own grief. You had your brother, who was going through the exact same loss, but somehow managed to build a stable life and family. You had your grandmother, who loved you unconditionally and covered for your mistakes time and time again. You had William and Catherine, who welcomed you into their family and treated you like a beloved brother. You had an entire nation that watched you grow up and rooted for your happiness. But none of that was enough for you, was it? Because it meant you had to be grateful instead of angry, and anger was so much easier to live with. Stop, Harry whispered, his hands covering his face. Just stop. But Michael wasn't stopping. He was like a surgeon now, cutting deeper with each word. And when you finally found love, when you met someone who could have been your partner in building something beautiful, instead of being the bridge between her and your family, you became the wedge that drove them apart. Instead of helping your wife adjust to royal life, instead of being her shield and her guide, you fed her your grievances and your paranoia until she saw enemies everywhere she looked. Don't bring my wife into this, Harry said from behind his hands. Leave her out of it. Why? Because she's off limits. Because criticizing the Duchess of Sussex is somehow forbidden. Michael's voice was incredulous. Harry, your wife came into your family and immediately began making demands about how things should change to accommodate her preferences. When those demands weren't met to her satisfaction, when she realized that being royal meant following centuries-old protocols and putting duty before personal desires, she decided the entire institution was racist and toxic. And instead of trying to find middle ground or helping her understand the complexities of royal life, you validated every complaint and amplified every grievance until leaving became the only option that would satisfy her ego. Harry looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. She was suffering. The press was attacking her constantly. The family wasn't protecting her. I couldn't just stand by and watch her suffer the same way my mother did. So you convinced her that the suffering was everyone else's fault instead of helping her develop the thick skin that royal life requires, Michael shot back. You made her temporary discomfort into everyone else's permanent problem, and then acted surprised when that created irreparable damage to relationships that had taken decades to build. The racism was real, Harry insisted desperately. The conversations about our son's skin color, the differential treatment in the press, the lack of support from the palace, all of that was real. Michael leaned back, his expression skeptical, because when you were pressed for details about these alleged racist conversations, you and your wife became remarkably vague about who said what and when. You made